In this example problem, we're going to be dual fuels and we are going to sell some products in a bundle, if you will. We're going to sell a local small business some HVAC equipment, so heating and air conditioning, and we're also going to give them consulting services, which should enhance their energy efficiency of their business location. When we sell these to this other party, to this local business, we're not going to charge them as much as we would if they bought both of these two items, as they call standalone. Each one of these has its own price that we would normally charge a customer for it. And it says in our information here that the standalone price of HVAC would be 103,000 and 184,000. Well, people typically want a discount when you buy in volume and you buy in a bundle, and that's what we're going to do here. So the agreement that Dual Fuels is coming to with this local business is that they're going to get paid $61,000 flat rate up front. And then they are also on top of that going to get paid 62% of whatever amount of energy, so utilities, propane, electricity, etc., that this company saves in that first year with this new equipment and with dual fuels guiding its usage. When Dual was going through and they were writing up this contract, they estimated that this local small business would save $509,000 on their energy costs during the first year that they had this new equipment and they were being consulted. But they actually ended up saving this customer $546,000. Well, we need, in this case, since these things are being sold in a bundle, to find some methodology to split this combined cost that we're getting, the $61,000 flat rate plus 62% of energy savings, between the two components of this bundle. And that is for the purpose of revenue recognition. Some things won't always be recognized at the same time. So let's chart this out down here really fast to figure out how we're going to do it according to the standalone method. And the standalone method essentially states that you are going to assign a prorated portion of consideration to each product based upon what portion of the total cost that customers would have paid each product would have been had they bought everything standalone. So our HVAC equipment sells standalone for $103,000 for the stuff that they bought. We would typically charge $184,000 for yearly consulting services. If you add those two numbers together, that means that if we didn't offer this other alternative for consideration, if we forced this other local small business to buy these standalone, it would have cost them $287,000. Let's figure out what percentage of that $287,000 would have come from them buying HVAC equipment and what portion of it would have came from consulting. So to find the standalone percentage, all you do is take the standalone price of each component product and divide it by the total standalone price. HVAC would have cost 103,000 out of that $287,000. That is to the nearest tenth, 35.7 or 35.9%. And then for consulting, 184,000 divided by 287,000 gives you 64.1%. Math check yourself because those two numbers should come up to the full 100% of standalone price, and they do. So real fast, this isn't actually 35.9%. I have Excel set up to round this off to the nearest decimal. When it displays, as you can see, it's something crazy over here. And for the purpose of my calculations right now, I'm not going to come up with um, proper numbers in this case. So I'm going to come up with some wild penny numbers if I keep all of those decimals in there. So what I'm going to tell Excel to do really fast before we proceed is I'm going to have it round this. So I'm going to go into the formula, say equals round, open a parenthesis, and that is the formula I want for the number. I'm going to insert a comma afterwards, and it's going to ask me how many digits I want to round to. And this is a percentage. So if I converted it to decimal form and I wanted to have a tenth in there, it would be 3 digits. And now it's 35.9% still, but as you can see, when I increase it, it is exactly 35.9%. It's not going to make a huge difference with what you've got going on in terms of the procedure at all. But what it's going to do is make it so your books aren't cluttered with pennies. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to have Excel make sure that this rounds to three decimal places as well. And now this is 64.1%. Yes, I could have just typed it, but I like using Excel functions, so that's what it is. And now what we have to do is allocate a portion of our consideration equal to what portion of this cost standalone would have been from each component product. So our fixed consideration is $61,000. If 35.9% of the standalone cost would have been attributable to HVAC equipment, let's assign that particular component product 35.9% of that $61,000. And that comes out to $21,899. Let's do the same process over here for our consulting. The fixed portion of our contract is $61,000. The standalone percentage for our consulting services was 64.1%. So let's assign that particular component product 64.1% of the $61,000. That comes up to 39,101. And if I add those two together, I get $61,000, which it should be. That's how we're going to spread out the 61,000 between the two different products. What about our variable consideration that we've got going over here? Well, they are paying us based upon how much they actually save. So 546,000 is how much they actually saved in energy in this first year of usage. We get variable consideration equal to 62% of that, but 62% of the 546,000 is the total variable consideration that we're trying to spread out. Let's hit enter to see what it is. $338,520. But not all of that's going to go to the HVAC equipment. Only 35.9% of that should be going to the HVAC equipment. So I'm going to go back into my formula over here, double click, and I'm going to multiply that by the 35.9%. So for this variable consideration, I just take the actual savings, multiply it by the percentage that we're getting according to our contract, and then multiply that again by the percentage that should be assigned to this particular component product. And now that comes out to 121,529. Same process over here for consulting. 546,000 times 62% times 64.1% of standalone price gives us 216,991. And I go and I add those two numbers together, and that is the 338,520, which we already determined is 62% of that 546 grand. There we go. So we allocated out our variable consideration between the two products. Well, what's the total consideration? It's just the portion of fixed that goes to each product plus the portion of variable that goes to each product. So 21,899 of the fixed consideration should go to the HVAC equipment. 121,529 of the variable consideration should go to the HVAC equipment. All in all, that's $143,428 that's going to the HVAC equipment. We can do the same math down here. For fixed consideration for consulting, it's 39,101. The variable consideration for consulting is 216,991. That adds up to $256,092. And if I add those two numbers together for our total consideration, it comes up to 399,520. Let's math check ourselves again because that should be equal to the total fixed consideration plus the total variable consideration. And it is. Our numbers check out. We highlight them to make ourselves feel fancy. There we go. Those two numbers, like both ways, work out. So this is the total amount of consideration that we are receiving right here, $399,520. $143,428 is going to go to the HVAC equipment. $256,092 is going to go to consulting. So why is it important to separate these two? Well, it all depends on when you're going to recognize revenues. The question in your homework ends right here. But for these two different things, it is certainly plausible that dual fuels would recognize the revenues from the HVAC equipment at the time that they sold it, but they're not providing all the consulting services in a day. They're providing it over an entire year in the first year, which means this number might be the revenue that we recognize at the point of sale, at the time, all of that. But this 256,092 might have to go on the books as unearned consulting revenue and then be recognized periodically over the next year as we are providing the consulting. And it lays an interesting concept in here, which I will talk about briefly before I conclude this video, is that a lot of times the consideration that you assign to one of your component products, especially if it's like some kind of subscription service, won't be equal to the actual cash that you receive. And that really is a trouble because you need to put it on the books as you recognize it, but you're recognizing maybe more cash at the time that you're receiving than you would be revenues at the time. So what do you do? If you look around on a company's books that operates under contracts and like bundled services like this. So basically selling something and then providing support to it afterwards. You'll see an account listed under their assets called contract assets, and that's what it is. It's a made up, for the lack of a better term, a asset account that you're going to have that is there to make your books work because your actual recognized revenues under this methodology won't always line up with the actual amount of cash you're receiving.